Catia Essential Training, part 003. We're going to continue with sketching, mainly some aspects regarding rectangle elements. So to get started, I will go to Start Mechanical Design, Part Design, and I will select the X and Y plane. I will define a new sketch. We're going to see that we have the rectangle over here after profile. So within 002 we discussed the sketch profile. Now I want to discuss the rectangle, but also we're going to check over here on sketch tools. For the rectangle, we're going to see that for the profile we had these elements, so 3-point arc, tangent, arc, line. And for the rectangle we don't going to have those, but we're going to discuss this. So we're going to have the geometrical constraint. By default, it's important to have all these three checked. So if they are checked, they will be in orange. Now let's see the difference between those checked and unchecked. For example, we're going to have the geometrical constraint. I selected the rectangle, and we're going to see that in order to define a rectangle, we have the requested input in the left corner. So we can select or click the first point to create a rectangle. In this case, I'm going to go on the 0, 0. Now I need to define the second point to trace that rectangle, so similar to other CAD software. And as soon as I click that, I'm going to see that I have the possibility to see the length and the width for this. So for example, I can double click, set it to 50 millimeters, double click 75. And also we have this parallelism, and we also have a vertical constraint for those two vertical edges and two horizontal constraints between those two. So those are regarding this. So we have the geometrical constraint activated. If I'm going to have that deactivated, and I will go over here to the left and I will trace a second rectangle, we're going to see that now we have the constraints, but we no longer have those added. And now if this will still remain inactive, for example, I'm going to select the two vertical edges. By holding down Control, you can do multiple selection. I will go over here within the constraint defining dialog box. And we have the possibility to add that vertical constraint. But as soon as I will click this, I'm going to receive a warning. So we see that constraints created are temporary. If you want it permanent, you need to activate constraint creation switches before clicking the OK button. So this is the constraint activated, so I need to have that selected. Initially I will leave it deactivated, and as soon as I will click OK, I'm going to see that those were temporary, so they will no longer remain. I'm going to check those, select those again, open this, have the geometrical constraint enabled, and now if I'm going to choose vertical, I'm going to see that those vertical and parallelism will remain. So the same will be with the horizontal one if we're going to select that. So this is why it's important to have the geometrical constraint enabled. I'm also going to go with Shift F1 and check the documentation. So we see that this allows us to quickly create dimensional geometrical constraints, and we have some case studies over here. We have a circle and a line, and we can define the diameter of the constraint circle. We can also define a relation between the line and the circle, and we're going to have this distance. Or we can also add tangency between elements. And further, we can also fix some sketch elements, in this case the line, in order to have that fixed within the drawing. Okay, so for the following one, we're gonna have the dimensional constraint. I'm gonna go again with Shift F1 to see the documentation. So this will allow us to create dimensional constraints. And there are some examples over here. So we have the value fields when we define an element. But let's see directly within Catia. For example, I'm gonna have that disabled, and as soon as I will disable the dimensional constraints, the automatic dimensional constraints will also be disabled because these two are linked. So I can't have this deactivated and have access to the automatic dimensional constraints. So if I will go to the rectangle with those unchecked, I'm gonna see that yes, I will trace a rectangle, but I don't have the exact value for this. So I either double click on that and I need to define the parameters like the length, or I can go with constraints and I will need to add that value. In this case, if I'm gonna change this, for example, something like 80, I'm gonna see that the rectangle will be reshaped like this. So this happens because we don't have those vertical, horizontal constraints between our elements. So it's quite hard to define some sketches like this if you want to start with some basic shapes, because all the elements will not be linked. We're just gonna have some points, some edges, and we can define some elements with those. But if I'm gonna have the dimensional constraint enabled, but I will uncheck the automatic dimensional constraint, we're gonna see that we're gonna have this. So that this will be that case. And again, for example, this will be 50, but there are still no constraints. If you're gonna have the following one also enabled, so the automatic dimensional constraint, this will make everything a lot easier, since as soon as I'm gonna click the second point, the dimensions will appear, and again I can change those, but this will again do some changes within the sketch because we don't have this fully defined. In this case, even though we don't have the geometrical constraints, so we don't have the vertical and horizontal elements, the sketch will no longer be as loose as the previous one, where it was really easy to just grab a point and have those change. Since we have both constraints added, we're gonna have to stick with those constraints. But we also have the possibility to go with the constraint, and we can change this, for example, 75, and that will overwrite those constraints, and we can have custom angles if wanted. We also have the construction standard element over here, so this is the first selection within the sketch tools from this section. If I'm gonna have this checked, and again I'm gonna check for a rectangle profile, we're gonna see that this will be with a dashed line. So that means that this won't be taken into account if we're gonna use this sketch. So this is mainly just as a construction reference. And if you want to define something as a construction, you can either have it selected, you can check it over here, and you can have that unchecked. Okay, so by default, I highly recommend to keep the geometrical constraint, the dimensional constraint, also the automatic dimensional constraint, all three checked, so they will be in orange. I also want to talk about the grid. So we can enable the grid at the bottom. And now we're going to see that grid hatch within the viewport. With another rectangle, I have the possibility to sketch that. But if I want to have the points snapping to those grids, I'm gonna need to check this snap to point. So as soon as I have that checked, I'm gonna see that now I can only position the points where the grid will enable that between those lines. It's usually best to have snap to grid disabled and also have the grid disabled, because you usually have more control like this if those won't be visible in the viewport. Okay, now if you want to delete multiple sketches within a specific sketch, for example, we have over here sketch 001, we can do a rectangle selection. We can have those all selected, and after that we can press delete on the keyboard and those will be deleted. Let's go for the following one. So this will be the oriented rectangle. We're gonna see that so the main difference from the initial one is, again, we have to specify the first point, but after that, when we're gonna specify the second one, we have the possibility to have this oriented. So that means we can define the direction of the line, and as soon as I will have that defined, I can define the height of our rectangle. If you want to, you can add specific values over here. Either you can select them with the mouse, you can add the numeric value. With tab, you're gonna have that checked and selected. Or by default, when you click the oriented rectangle, if you're gonna press tab, you're gonna have the possibility to define the first point corner, so 0, 0, and after that we can define that like this. So I'm gonna go for the following one. So this will be the parallelogram. So it's quite similar to the oriented rectangle. As we can see, for the oriented rectangle, we're gonna have a perpendicular. So this will be 90 degrees. All of those will be 90 degrees. But in the case of a parallelogram, we can specify the first point, the second point, but after that, we can also change the angle. For example, if I'm gonna have this defined like this, I'm gonna see that this will have an angle of, let's say, 120. That means that if I'm gonna measure the angle over here, this will be again 120, but over here we're gonna have 60. So in total 180 degrees. This will be the parallelogram. Now, if you want to have multiple sketches defined, for example, this will be sketch 1. I have the possibility to leave that sketch, so that will be sketch 001. In this case, we see that we have some update options, mainly with the last one, since I also added this 60 degrees, 120, and it's colored in purple. So purple means that the sketch is over constrained. We can easily fix this by just deleting one of those. And if I'm going to leave the sketch, I will no longer have those update problem. It's usually a good idea not to have anything over-defined. And now I will go and define a sketch in the X and Y plane. If I want to hide everything regarding sketch 1, I can go have that selected, hide show, and we can start blank within the second sketch. I'm gonna go for the following one, so this will be the elongated hole. Mainly we can define 2 points, so these 2 points will define this. If the line will be in blue, that means that we're also gonna have an horizontal constraint on that line. If not, it will be like this. And as soon as I will click the second point, now I have the possibility to define the offset of the elongated element, and we're going to see that we have a length, so for example 50, the value, the distance between those 2 points, and we're going to have this, for example 10, that will also be similar to the radius. So you're going to see that this arc will have a radius of 10, just as this distance will be 10 millimeters. If you want to, we can force this to be horizontal. That will be the same just as if I would have traced that and waited for that blue input. So this means that it will automatically be horizontal, and we can see that added over there. The following one is quite similar to the elongated hole, but is a cylindrical elongated hole. The main difference is that we are going to define initially a point. After that, we're going to define a radius for a circle, and after that we can trace an arc. And as soon as I will have that arc defined, again I have the possibility to define that elongated profile, and we're gonna see that we have again a radius, we're gonna have an angle, and we're gonna have the radius of the inner circle over here. So we can add specific values as you want to. For each element we can press Shift F1 and go within the documentation. So this will be creating cylindrical elongated hole, just as the one that we currently defined. So we have the initial point, the second point to define the radius of the circle, and after that we're gonna have that element outline, but we're gonna see how we're gonna keep this profile sketched. Okay, so let's go to the next one. We're gonna have the key hole profile. For this one, again, we're gonna need to specify a point, after that a line, so quite similar to the first one. But after that, we're gonna see that the profile will be like this. So we're gonna have at the top, we can define a radius for a circle, and for the bottom will be similar to the elongated hole. So we're gonna have this distance, but we're gonna have an extra radius at the top. The following one will be a polygon. So we see that by default we can change all those values. So the center point, horizontal, vertical, the radius. This will be the radius that the polygon will be either defined in a circle, or it can be circumcircle. This will be the first option. If you're gonna go for the second one, this will be that. So we're gonna see that those are the two changes that can be added to a polygon. We see that they all have 6 sides. So if you want to change that, we see over here the side number. It's currently set to gray, but we have the possibility to change that. But we need to first specify the location, and we're gonna see that I can go with the mouse over here. So we have a lock, an N, and we see that is as default number of sides. We can have that checked. So that means I will need to click on that. I will define the following point, and after that, as I move the mouse around the profile, so the minimum number of sides will be 3. This will define a triangle. If I'm gonna go with the mouse, so this will be a square. After that, we're gonna have a star with 5. We're gonna have the hexagon, and we can continue to define up to 24 sides for this one. We're gonna see that the range is only between 3 and 25 in this case. So we can have more than that. So I'm gonna stick with 12. So we're gonna have that 12-sided polygon defined over there. The following one is a center rectangle. So that means we need, for example, if I will use this center from this polygon, I will have the possibility to draw a rectangle that will be centered over there, and we're gonna see that we're gonna have those y distance also defined. Again, I'm gonna clear this to make it much easier to see. Usually we make use of center rectangle when we define sketches and we want to have them mirror regarding some axis like we have over here, either on the vertical or the horizontal or on both, like in this case. Or we have the possibility to define a centered parallelogram. So this will be quite similar to the initial parallelogram. The main difference is that, again, we can specify, we see select the first line. So in this case, we need to select lines, not points. For example, I will select this line, and now I can have that defined over here. Since those two lines were at 90 degrees, also the center parallelogram will be like that. But if, for example, I will trace a line like this and another line like that and go with center parallelogram between those two, I will see that I will have that parallelogram, and I have the possibility to change the values for that. So something like 80, or I can go something like 20. Okay, I see that this video is quite longer than expected already, so it's 21 minutes. Mainly I wanted to talk about all the profiles, options. So the main and most common use is the rectangle, but keep in mind that you can trace other profiles underneath the rectangle. It's the same for all the options that have that small little arrow. You can expand it, and within the next video we're going to discuss the elements regarding the circle. Okay, so I hope you find this video useful. If so, let me know in the comment section, and also consider to subscribe if you haven't already, because I saw that the vast majority of the viewers are not subscribed. And thanks for watching. So we're gonna continue this within the following 0,0 part that will address the circle from Sketch. Okay, so I wrap it up. Thanks for watching. Bye.